If you've been a Garmin fanboy long enough, you may remember a device that launched back in 2014, I think. It was called the Garmin EPIX, and it was a big, chunky, square-looking thing that featured full mapping and was way ahead of its time. Unfortunately, that device was just way too big for most people. It didn't sell very well, and Garmin just kind of let it die off over time. However, today, Garmin intends to revive the Garmin EPIX name with the brand new Garmin EPIX Gen 2, which brings a lot more to the table than that original version. The EPIX Gen 2 isn't the only new device from Garmin. They also launched the Garmin Fenix 7 right alongside the EPIX Gen 2, and honestly, these two devices are nearly identical in just about every way, except for one important factor. So because these two are so similar, instead of me babbling about all of the features of the EPIX Gen 2, I'm going to suggest you go check out my full review of the Garmin Fenix 7, and I'll link that up here, and you can see all of the details on what's new in the Fenix 7 compared to the Fenix 6 and all that stuff in that video. In this video, we're going to focus on the difference between the Garmin Fenix 7 and the brand new EPIX Gen 2. What sets it apart? Well, to spoil it, the EPIX Gen 2 is basically a Fenix 7 with an OLED screen. Okay, I guess that's the end of this video. But no, just kidding. There's way more to talk about here. Before we dive in though, a quick shout out to today's sponsor, and that is playbetter.com. If you're interested in picking up a Garmin Fenix 7 or an EPIX, definitely check out the links down below to PlayBetter because they offer free, fast shipping and a no-hassle 60-day return policy. Yeah, they're great to shop with. Okay, let's move on. The first thing I want to do is glaze over the similarities between the Garmin EPIX Gen 2 and the Fenix 7. Both of these devices are fully touch controlled. Both of them have improved GPS accuracy with multi-band GPS. Both of them offer the same Elevate 4.0 heart rate sensor on the back. Both of them offer the new stamina data field with real-time feedback. Both do offer the same activity tracking features with the same activity profiles. Both have the same smartwatch features with phone notifications, calendar support, weather widget. Both offer Garmin Pay for contactless payments, and both do offer offline music with storage for up to 650 songs from Spotify, Amazon, or just plain old MP3s. And finally, both devices do offer the same advanced training tools with estimated VO2 max, training load, load focus, recovery advisor, and more. Okay, hopefully I went through that quick enough and didn't bore you to death. Now let's talk about the options with the Garmin EPIX Gen 2. The Garmin EPIX, unlike the Garmin Fenix 7, only comes in one size. You're looking at it here. It is 47 millimeters in diameter, which is the same as the middle of the road Garmin Fenix 7. And as you can see here, side by side with my old Garmin Fenix 6, you can see they're nearly identical in size. At launch, there will be 3 versions available. There will be a black or slate colored steel version. There'll be the black titanium version, which is the one I have here, and there'll also be a white titanium version. In terms of pricing, you're looking at $899 for the steel version or $999 for the titanium version I have here. That is a lot of money. Another thing to note is that unlike the Garmin Fenix 7, the Garmin EPIX Gen 2 does not offer any versions that have solar on board. The Fenix 7, almost all of them have solar. The EPIX doesn't have that option. Like I said, the EPIX Gen 2 is 47 millimeters in diameter, and it's about 14.5 millimeters thick, and it comes in at just 70 grams, which is actually pretty light for a watch of this size. If you opt for the steel version, it will be a little bit heavier, coming in at around 76 grams, so just keep that in mind. The EPIX Gen 2 also utilizes the same 22 millimeter quick fit bands that the Garmin Fenix 7 uses, so they're compatible. And the EPIX Gen 2, despite having this really nice display, is waterproof to 100 meters. Okay, I've wasted enough time before I got to this. Let's talk about the standout feature on the new Garmin EPIX, and that's going to be the 1.3-inch AMOLED display. For a long time, I've always heard complaints in the comments of my videos that people always wanted a Fenix with a nice bright display, and that just never existed before today. Now you've got that option with the Garmin EPIX. And this new display tech in the Garmin EPIX is really exciting to me because it's really a hybrid between a proper sports watch and a really nice smartwatch in one device. It kind of bridges the gap between a Garmin Fenix 6 I have here and the Garmin Venu 2 on the right side of your screen, kind of the middleman between these two devices. And the display on the Garmin EPIX Gen 2 is fantastic. It is super bright. It is really easy to read in direct sunlight. There's really minimal glare on the screen, and it is a joy to use. Something I noticed about this display is it seems like it has a higher refresh rate compared to other OLED displays like on the Garmin Venu 2. I don't know if it's something that's in the specs or anything, but when I swipe around the screen, it just feels a lot more fluid than other OLED watches that I have, and it's more comparable to something like an Apple Watch. Another interesting feature about the EPIX is that you get this really nice OLED display, but you also have the option of having sapphire glass over that OLED display. The model I have here is the titanium sapphire version, and so I've got this really beautiful display with a sapphire crystal across the top of it for extreme durability. I can smash this thing off of rocks, and I don't really have to worry about scratching it too much. Not to say it's impossible to scratch, but it is difficult. There are a few new options to go through on the Garmin EPIX when it comes to the display. You can see here that there is an option for the always on display. However, this does impact your battery life, which we'll talk about in a minute. And when we go down to brightness on the Garmin EPIX Gen 2, you can see that there are 3 brightness settings for low, medium, and high. Going down, you can see there's also a gesture option down here. And this is the same as on the Garmin Fenix 7, where when you flick your wrist up, it turns the backlight on. And I will say, in terms of the gesture-based backlight, it's really responsive. There was no lag for when I flicked my wrist, even while running. It was not something I was always waiting on. So if you want to maximize your battery life, using that gesture-based backlight is not the end of the world. Another benefit of that OLED display is that it has a really high resolution. And so if you're in an activity, it actually supports up to 8 data fields, which is great. It means you can see more information at a glance. And just like on the Garmin Fenix 7 and Fenix 6, the Garmin EPIX does support full offline mapping with Topo active maps that you can download using Wi-Fi right on the watch itself. And this is where the OLED display of the Garmin EPIX really shines. Using the map and navigation features on the Garmin EPIX is easily the best mapping experience I've tried on any watch to date. That includes the Fenix 7, because the display on the Garmin EPIX is so crisp and vibrant and bright. It's got so many colors to it that reading the map is just so much easier than any other watch, and it looks more like a smartphone. Another cool feature about the mapping is that it'll actually switch from a daytime theme to a nighttime theme depending what time of day it is. So it actually go to like a dark mode when it gets later in the day, so it's a little less harsh on your eyes when you're trying to read it at a glance. Now that I've gushed about how awesome this display is and the user experience is with the EPIX, let's talk about the downside of having a really nice display on a watch like this, and that's going to be the battery life. Now, battery life isn't terrible, but if you're used to something like a Garmin Fenix 6 or Fenix 7, it's going to be a little bit of a different story when it comes to the EPIX. In standby mode or smartwatch mode, when you're just wearing it in day-to-day life, you can get up to 6 days with the display in always on mode, so it's never turning off. If you go into gesture mode, where it turns on when you flick your wrist, you'll get up to 16 days. And that wrist gesture thing is very responsive, so I won't hesitate to use that. It's just something to consider. Now, when we talk about GPS modes, keep in mind that the Garmin EPIX does have the same multi-band GPS, multi-frequency technology that the Garmin Fenix 7 has, so there are a lot of considerations to take into account. In GPS only mode, we're looking at up to 30 hours with the screen always on, or up to 42 hours if you use the gesture mode, and that's using the older GPS technology, so it's just basic GPS. Now, if we switch to all systems on, we'll get GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo simultaneously, and whichever has the strongest signal, we'll lock onto that. You'll get up to 24 hours in always on display mode, or up to 32 hours in gesture-based display mode. And finally, if we go to all systems on plus multi-band, that means we can actually use multiple signals from multiple satellite systems to get the most accuracy. That's going to give us up to 15 hours with the always on display, or up to 20 hours with the gesture-based display. So as you can see, we're not getting quite the same impressive numbers as we see on the Garmin Fenix 7. But I mean, in basic GPS mode, you can get up to 30 hours in always on display mode, or 42 with the gesture-based mode. That's going to be enough to run 100 miles, 100K, just about any distance. So you're basically covered, but if you want to use the most accuracy with multi-band mode, only having 15 hours is definitely going to weigh down on you. There are a couple of more options in terms of the satellite systems. You can also switch into ultra track mode, and that will give you up to 63 hours, but it really kills your accuracy. I really try to avoid that in most cases, unless it's a pinch. And like I said, the EPIX does feature multi-band GPS mode, just like the Fenix 7, and the accuracy coming from the EPIX is quite good. In most cases, the Garmin EPIX and the Fenix 7 performed almost identically, with the always on mode being being very accurate, and even the basic GPS mode being really accurate as well. All in all, I gotta say that the Garmin EPIX is a big step up in terms of accuracy compared to something like the Garmin Fenix 6, and it's basically the same as the Fenix 7, so I'm not gonna blab too much about it here. In terms of heart rate accuracy coming from the Elevate 4.0 sensor on the back of the watch, it's a similar story. In most cases, I got really good results and was quite pleased with it. In some cases, there were a couple of wobbles here and there, but nothing too concerning. And it's still early days here. I haven't had this EPIX for very long, so I'm gonna continue to test it. But so far, in terms of heart rate accuracy, it's looking to be just as good as the Fenix 7 in most cases. I've only taken the EPIX out on a handful of runs, so I don't have a ton of data to compare. So far though, it's looking pretty good and right in line with the Garmin Fenix 7 and something like the Garmin Venu 2 because they all have the same heart rate sensor. Okay, final thoughts on the Garmin EPIX. What do I think about it so far? Well, I really like this thing, and honestly, I think the Garmin EPIX is the watch that a lot of people were hoping the Garmin Fenix would be. I've seen a lot of comments out there, people hoping that the Garmin Fenix 7 would have an AMOLED option, and now we have that with the Garmin EPIX Gen 2. And the nice thing about this being a separate device from the Fenix 7 is now you've got the option. If you want a classic sports watch with amazing battery life, and you like a transflective display that works great in the sunlight, get a Fenix 7. If you like an AMOLED display and you want a watch that's just great to wear in daily life and read your text messages and an amazing map experience, check out the Garmin EPIX. Even though I really like the Garmin EPIX, there are a few things I don't love about it. First of all, the lack of LTE is kind of weird to me, especially in this watch, in the EPIX, because it's got the OLED display. We saw the LTE stuff roll out in the Garmin 945 LTE a while ago, and I really thought it was going to make its way into these higher end devices. Another nice to have would have been the speaker and microphone that we just saw launch on the Garmin Venu 2 Plus, because that would have made the smartwatch experience on the EPIX just a little bit nicer. And finally, when we look at the price of the Garmin EPIX coming in at $899 for the steel version or $1,000 for the titanium version, this is not a watch for everyone. And combine that price with the reduced battery life on the EPIX due to that new AMOLED display, it becomes a little bit less appealing to endurance athletes out there. Ultra marathon runners, hikers, triathletes, Ironman, that sort of thing maybe dissuade from the high price and lower battery life of the EPIX. That's just something to consider. That said, this is a really exciting step forward for Garmin, and it's cool to see them be first in this kind of competition, who's going to come out with this really high-end premium sports watch and also have an OLED display. It's finally here. And honestly, I really like this device, and it may end up being my daily driver in the future. I don't know. There's so many. It's really hard to make a decision. Now I want to hear from you. Are you interested in the Garmin EPIX or the Garmin Fenix 7? Which one's right for you? Let me know in the comments down below which one you're leaning towards, which one you're gonna get. I'd love to hear from you. That's all I've got for this one. If you found this video helpful, fun, entertaining, it passed the time, maybe consider hitting that thumbs up and subscribe button down below so you don't miss more videos from me in the future. I'd really appreciate that. And if you are interested in picking up a Garmin EPIX Gen 2 or a Garmin Fenix 7 or any watch that I showed in this video, I'll have links down below in the description that do help support my channel, and they cost nothing extra to you, so I'd appreciate if you use them. And that is it. That's all I've got for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna stop talking now. Yep. Okay. Bye.